Well, I want to know first of all your name.
Yes, my name is Ojvind Hesselager. I'm a Danish journalist. I live in Copenhagen, and I am a magazine writer and a TV producer.
And the documentary which you came here called?
I'm here with a documentary produced by Express TV production where I work, and it's titled Bringing Life to Space, and it's a series of 3, and we are here with one episode. It's called Living 1 Year in a Container.
And which is the subject of your first documentary, with the first part of your documentary?
The subject of the first documentary is that Russia, when the Americans were very busy beating Russia in getting to the moon, Russia had a secret plan. They wanted to be the first to reach Mars, which is a travel of more than 1 year. And they trained in a closed system where people were living for half or a whole year, producing their own food, producing their own water, because they were training also psychological for this long trip.
And after the year, how were the people who lived in that container?
Well, in the documentary, we found some of the people. We found 2 people in Siberia that worked with this. They were test persons, and we found one guy in Moscow who was a test person in the 60s and the 70s. And they told us that they were not affected, psychological or physiological. They had no diseases. It'd been hard work. It's hard to be together in a very narrow space for so long time, but they were okay and fit.
But the story of your documentary doesn't seem like that. It's a little bit of different.
Today they are okay. They had no diseases. That's my point. The people who were in the closed system didn't die of it, or they had no diseases.
Okay,
but
yes.
They had a spontaneous reaction because it wasn't funny, it wasn't nice to live together for so long time. So at the moment it wasn't nice. But I think they were very committed to do this because they were in Russia and they were told by the big system, we would like you to go into this closed container because Russia wants to be the first to go to Mars.
And when the plants get involved with this documentary, what happens?
Plants?
The plants...
Yeah, it's a scientist in the 60s in Russia discovered that people living in closed systems can have depression and they can start hating each other. But if you take a plant and put it into the closed system where the people training for their Mars mission are living, it will make them feel good. They can eat the plant, but also nursing the plant is very important for how they feel. So it's a point in the movie that when we are leaving Earth, we need to take a part of Earth with us, otherwise we will not survive.
I was thinking about that yesterday, and with this theory we could say that if a person grows up with no plants, then as an older man he might not need the plants, or not?
No, that's a good question. Will we need plants if we never met them? I think that what makes human is that we are able to take care of things, that we have emotions, and plants, that's something you can show emotion to. You can also do it to animals. You know, people who've been in prison, and you have a small animal in the prison, they will take care of the mouse. And in the space, you will take care of small insects because they represent something you remember. And I think that makes us alive, and that's awake our feelings.
I have already thought, and I had a question about why don't the 3 TV series, the 3 documentaries, didn't put all in and come here as a long-length documentary.
We would like to be here with a long-length documentary and not just part 1 out of 3, because when you see the first episode, hopefully you will like to see number 2 and number 3 as well. It's a question about financing and technical, because when we produce a documentary, we get it financed as a series, and TV stations often like to buy small series instead of buying one documentary. It's also good in the slot that is used for education. It's also for educational use, even though it's also for public service TV stations. So that's a bit complicated answer, but that's the answer.
Are there companies that are interested about this documentary?
I've been told by the Danish public service station, the DR, or Danish radio and television, that 17 countries should have asked about it. It just won a prize in Brazil, the first prize for TV series for best show, and we hope that this will make countries, public service stations around the world interested.
I'd like to ask about the other 2 documentaries.
Yeah.
Which is the subject of the other 2?
The subject, as you see in number 1, we are in Russia. What happens in the late 80s is that American scientists visits Russia and talk to Russian scientists to hear about their experiences from closed systems. They bring this knowledge to the United States, and they built in the desert an enormous construction called Biosphere 2 with 3,500 species, animals and plants from all over the world. It's very, very expensive. It's financed by oil money from a millionaire who puts money into it. And 8 people live in this closed system in the desert for 2 years. And they have taken a lot of film, archive materials from inside. So we travel back, we use the archive materials, and we interview the people who tried to live 2 years in this closed system. They did it for 2 reasons. They wanted to copy Biosphere 1, that's the Earth, and they wanted to explore how is it to go to Mars, because they know that, as we saw in episode 1, you have to bring a piece of biosphere to survive.